What is up, you guys, and welcome back to the Prime Vanguard channel. In today's video, we will be doing a deck demonstration for my Mythiarq deck. Now, if you have not watched my Mythiarq deck profile, I recommend you watch that first before coming to this video, so you understand all of the card choice and decisions I have made for this build. Now, before I go into the deck demonstration, we are going to showcase the Mulligan and explaining the card choices, and we're going to do it all going first. Going first, we're going to be on a 1 damage interval and showcase our plays there. Alright, so to start off with Mulligan. Now, Mulligan, in the opening game, there are 3 cards I really do believe that this deck needs to see so that this way it can really get going. The first card I believe it needs to see is Atrocious Moth Girl Maple. Now, even though we only play 1 copy of this, seeing it in the early game, whether you want to discard it for ride up or call it to rush down with, I think that having Maple already out as soon as possible so it can be a recall target when you go into grade 3 to trigger Luruthzul's effect is going to be fantastic to getting that discard from your opponent. The next card definitely is Mythiarq Habitat. Now, I've already stated in the deck profile that Mythiarq Habitat is going to break a deck. Having a card that lets you check the top 7 and call something else out means that whether you're on grade 1 or grade 2 when you want to use this, if your hand is weak, this card can help you filter out your deck for the key piece you need on board or want in the drop zone later to get some sort of aggro going or to start setting up for your pieces. If you're on grade 2, you can search out for Maple, bring her out. You can check out any of your other Mythiarq cards you want to set up with later. It can also call itself out, so you can add itself back to your hand when you go on your Luruthzul turn. There's so much you could do with Mythiarq Habitat. I just believe opening up with it, because it is a grade 1, is a fantastic play as well. And then finally, for my last card to open up with, I believe it should be Borrow Mushrooms. Now, I've already talked about how incredible mushrooms are. The card gives you a soul, gives you 2 bodies on board. It gives you extra resources so that this way you can start rushing your opponent early with the bodies you have in play. You're going to get 2 rear guards, and by the time you go up to grade 3, you should have at least 3 to 4 bodies in play, unless you're playing against some sort of control matchup where they can affect you in the early game. But the mushrooms really do help get your offense going right away while giving you that extra soul that you'll want later in the game. Alright, you guys, now that we've discussed both Mulligan, talked about what Mythiarq wants to do, as well as you seeing our deck profile for Mythiarq, we are now ready to go into our first test hand. Our deck is shuffled and cut, and let's see what we get. Now we start off with 5 cards here. Alright, so triggers and PGs, and we have Mulligan. This is the only card worth keeping. If your opponent decides to rush you back in the early game, you can paralyze something early, but otherwise everything else has to go to the bottom. We'll check the top 4, Imperial, Mulligan, and Frenzied Heiress. This is much better. We have 3 different Mythiarq names ready to go, and we are ready to start playing. Alright, let's get this party started. We'll draw for turn, and we drew into an Imperial. We already have 1 in hand, and we can revive it back later, so we'll discard this to go into Illandrina. The opponent will then take their turn. I recommend not going past 2 damage prior to grade 3. You really only need 2 points of damage so that you can trigger your Imperial when you get there and the effect of your Vanguard. So we'll take our damage here, and then we'll take our turn. We have another Mulligan. We can go ahead and just drop this one, and then we can ride into Luruthzul. Now, me personally with this hand, I prefer to play a little bit safer because we don't want to lose on all of our pieces, and our opponent is going to know what we're trying to do for the discard. So therefore, we'll just have to give it up this time, and we will call Illandrina back. Now, if you really want the discard stuff that you can do, you can call Illandrina to the front, and then start swinging with 2 attacks, or you can hold it back to guarantee that you'll get the bodies needed on board to trigger Luruthzul's effect. Now, me personally, because of how Mythiarq plays, and just what my hand looks like right now, I think it's not worth the risk. We don't have any revival cards in hand, we don't have any solid pieces to really get going, and we're only going to go up to about 2 damage here this turn anyway, so therefore I think playing it like this and just hoping for like a Maple, a Margaret, or something else to get us going is much better. We'll swing in like this for 18 to the Vanguard, drive check, we got a heal trigger, alright, we'll heal this, and then we will pass turn. So our opponent will then attack us, we'll take our damage, we lose a Diantha, and then it becomes our turn again. So then we will stand, draw. We got a Mushrooms, just a little too late. The Mushrooms here doesn't really do much. I think that we can go ahead and get rid of it. So we'll get rid of Mushrooms here, and then we ride into Luruthzul. Now, a chain of effects happens. I personally like to use the Manta first to bring her out. We soul charge 1 to Luruthzul. Then Luruthzul's effect will go off. We'll look at the top 7 cards of our deck, and let's see what we get. So here we have Maple, Diantha, Uzastar, and Margaret. Well, we're not going to call them Margaret, we're not going to call triggers or PG, so it really comes down to these two. Considering the fact that we don't have an Uzastar and we're not at that point of damage yet, I actually rather call out the Maple, just in case for early game plays to set up for that later, because I already have an Elandrine on hand and an Alperial, so I think it'd just be better. But if you don't want to call out Maple, you can call this out, and call this out here if you like. I would actually put it here so our Mythiarq can get some power. Okay, Uzastar is now in play, and continuing with our play, we will then go ahead and call Elandrina, and we will also go ahead and call Mulligan. Now, this deck doesn't really need an insane amount of soul for right now because we don't have a lot of effects we want to use soul on. So in my opinion, I think resetting with the mantra is unnecessary. If you want to deck then you can use Mulligan, but I personally wouldn't. If you had an ability to, you know, say use the effect on to soul blast out the Luruthzul, go for it. But then we can go ahead and start attacking. So Monta will attack first. And this will be 15,000 to them because Elandrina's effect is now active, which means 5,000 power is going to be added to our units. Luruthzul will swing next. We'll then counterblast one. We add Mantra back to hand. So we have to add something that has a different name than Mantra, which means that we're going to call out Alperial. And then Alperial's effect will kick in on top of the effect of Elandrina, and Alperial will receive an additional 1,000 power. And then our Vanguard also has 5,000 power because of the effect of Elandrina. So we'll do Twin Drive check if they're not going to do anything. The first, critical. We'll give the critical here, and then this is swinging for 23, this is swinging for 31. So we can give it here. We'll go ahead and add another 10,000 power. Second check, Diantha. Okay, no other triggers. We can go ahead and start attacking. Elandrina, boosted by Alperial, will swing at the opponent for 31,000, and then this will swing at the opponent for 33,000. For an early game push turn, this isn't bad. You're automatically getting set up for your next turn. You're at 1 damage. You have a decent sized hand with some pretty good defensive options in your units that you want to hold on to next turn. You've got a Mantra for Soul, a Myriad to Paralyze, and Diantha. You can also bounce back the Alperial if you still have it later, if they choose not to attack into it, and if not, you have Diantha to bring it back. So yeah, pretty solid start. This is actually not a bad Mythiarq turn whatsoever. The Elandrinas gave power to our front row, so everything that we have was magic numbers against their grade 2, and we're doing pretty solid so far. Okay, our deck is ready to go for round 2, and let's see what we get. We got a PG, Mushroom, solid start, Heal Trigger, and Alperial. So other than the Mushroom, everything else was downhill. You don't need the Alperial right now. It's a grade 3. It doesn't do anything for you. So we'll turn everything else, and let's see what we get. Luruthzul, Alperial, Mulligan, and Critical Trigger. Okay, not bad. We got a couple of pieces we could drop in the early game, and let's see what goes on. Alright, let's go ahead and get started. Draw for turn. We got a Critical Trigger. In this case, you can actually drop the Luruthzul because you can always get it back later. So don't feel bad about discarding your Persona Ride in this deck. So then we'll do that, and we'll ride into Elandrina. Pass turn. Damage check. Diantha. Okay. Our turn. Draw. We got another Luruthzul. Not bad, but I'm not going to discard this one. This time, I'm actually going to give up a Critical Trigger, only because I have 2 different names in my hand, and I don't want to put myself in a situation where I won't have that. So we'll ride into Mantra, and this time I'm going to call the Elandrina to rear guard. And then I'm going to call out Mushrooms. Mushrooms will then go ahead and use its effect. We'll move it into the soul. We'll then be able to call out 2 plant token rear guards, and I'm going to call them here and here. And then I'm also going to call to rear guard Mulligan. Now, there are 3 units that have been called out, so Mulligan gets 5k power, and we can start attacking. So, this will be 10 to the Vanguard, drive check, Mythiarq Habitat, nice. Alright, and then this will be 13, and then this will be 20. Now, if they start swinging at your rear guards here by calling more of their own, don't feel bad, because if anything, normally they'll knock out these 2, which is really not that big of a loss. But if they do, you still have 2 rear guards in the back, and then this is a call, so you're still going to hit that Luruthzul count, and they're going to have less cards in their hand because they call cards to swing at your rear guards, not knowing that it's not going to do anything for your strategy. However, we're going to keep playing and act like they didn't do that. They just dealt a point of damage, so it's a front trigger. Lost one of those, and we'll keep it going. Alright, we will now stand, and draw. We got another Alperial. In this case, I'm just going to go ahead and discard one. I don't want to lose out another defensive option. And we ride into the Luruthzul. We'll go ahead and I'm going to put Matza in the back. And there's a reason for it. Then Luruthzul skill, Soul Charge. Luruthzul checks top 7. Alright, so top 7 call. We'll go ahead and get the Uzastar because it's the only Mythiarq card we don't have out in play yet. And the rest of the stuff we don't really want to call to rear guard because they don't do anything. Alright, we'll call Uzastar over here over the planet token, not that big a deal. Then we'll use the effect of Mulligan, who is going to bind the Matza. Let us Soul Charge again from Matza being called back out. Alright, now that we have that set up, we can then go ahead and use our Mythiarq Habitat to check top 7 cards of our deck. And I think that I will take, because of my hand, I'll call Mushrooms. Now, we're in a pretty solid spot here. We deck thin by 3 cards. The opponent has discarded 1. Assuming they called anything, if they did, we knocked out any intercepts they would have had because we did this twice for a double Soul Charge. And we have Mushrooms on board in case, you know, we're dealing with a control matchup. We're good to go. So all of the effects I'll now apply. The Mulligan has 5k because of its effect. This has 5k because Elandrina, we can start attacking. So Luruthzul Matza will attack. This will go ahead and be 15 to the opponent. If you don't want to swing with this first because you rather feel safe about keeping this, you can swing with this. It's perfectly fine. Swing with that. Then this will attack the Vanguard for a total of 19. The effect will then kick in. We will Counterblast 1. Bounce this back to hand. Take out Alperial and call her to rear guard. The effect of Alperial will then kick in when she's placed and there's 3 or more Mythiarqs in play. She'll get 5k, we'll take the Counterblast 1, and we will draw a card. We got a PG in this case, which is not bad. It's our first PG since the Mulligan, and we'll do our Twin Drive. First, critical trigger. Critical to Vanguard, we'll give the power. This is 23, this is 18 plus 8, 26. So we'll give the 10k here so that it hits over defensives. Second check, front trigger, so it didn't even matter. It'll give 10k to the entire front row, so everybody's hitting for some saucy numbers. Alright, so this will be 18, 28 plus 8, 36,000 to the Vanguard. This will be 20, 25, 35 plus 8. This will be 43,000 to the Vanguard. Another solid opening hand for Luruthzul. The Mythiarq Habitat deck thinning and then the Mushrooms coming into play in the early game. As you saw how solid it was, really does improve our offense. Our hand is looking pretty healthy too. We've got 6 cards in hand. We're only at 2 points of damage. We also have the Mulligan to come back into play to paralyze something. We've got Matza in play. We can recall that out later. And then we have Persona Ride. Now earlier in the game I did say it is okay to discard Persona Ride. I still stand by my decision. I play cards that call from the drop zone in my deck. And then you play Mythiarq Habitat, which actually calls out from the deck. So therefore, never feel bad about dropping your Persona Ride, as long as you're not going crazy and discarding all of your Luruthzuls, because at that point it will become way too reliant on Diantha. Alright you guys, we are now at our third and final test hand for our Mythiarq test. Hopefully for our last game we draw into the nuts. I see Mushrooms, I see Luruthzul, Mulligan, PG, and another Mulligan. So this hand's actually not bad at all whatsoever. You could honestly just get rid of these 2 pieces if you want to. No, you should get rid of these 2 pieces. And then the Mushrooms is solid to open up with. So is Persona Ride, because you can call it back later. And then have Mulligan for a different name. So we'll get rid of these 2 and let's see what else we can get. We draw 2. That is wild. We got Maple and Mythiarq Habitat. This is a solid opening hand for this deck, and I'm about to show you how crazy we can go. Alright, let's get our turn started. Draw for turn. Got a heal trigger, that's perfectly okay. And I'm going to go ahead and discard Persona Ride so that I can ride into Elandrina and then pass turn. Damage check. Uzastar, that's okay. Alright, stay in and draw. We got another Elandrina, not bad whatsoever. I'm actually going to discard the Zlatiorg here because I'm going to take this turn to push. We're riding Samantha. Elandrina will be moved back here. Then I'm going to go ahead and play Mythiarq Habitat first before I do anything else. Let's check top 7 and see what we get. We have 1 more card. We have a new Zastar. Okay. We have one in damage zones. Let's go ahead and call one out now because we don't need any more Millins. All right, we'll call this out over here. We'll put it behind Vanguard instead. Then we'll drop Mushrooms. Mushrooms is gonna come on over here and do his thing. We'll get 2 plant tokens. You could actually do here instead because it's still a good number. And then finally drop the Maple. So this is actually a super solid setup right now. We can go full aggro here. We're 13, 18, and 15. All of these requiring if they're at grade 1. This is about 15k, this is over 5k, and this is over 5k. So hopefully if we get a front trigger, that'd be even more insane, but let's see what happens here. All right, drive check. We got a heal trigger, not a front trigger, but that's perfectly fine. We can give it the power over here in case they hit a defensive. All right. And then Illandrina will attack with Maple support, and then this will attack with the support of Uzastar. The opponent will then take their turn, damage check. We got Luruthzul. That's perfectly fine. We have ways of getting it back, and we're still in a good spot. All right, stand, draw. We got another Uzastar. In this case, we can, let's see, depending on their hand, and if we still want to push, we can go ahead and drop this one. Drop Uzastar here, ride into Luruthzul. Now, before I use the effect of Manta this time, actually use Luruthzul's skill. I don't want to soul charge anything too valuable, so let's see what we get. Alright. This is our top 7 check. Automatically, the card I'm going to take is Mythiarq Habitat. Because Mythiarq Habitat, when it comes into play, is going to let us bounce it back to hand. We still have the 5 units in place. The opponent just discarded 1. Lose a plant token here, and this goes to hand. We'll then go ahead and drop Mythiarq Habitat. And let's see what else we get. We'll check top 7 again. We are deck thinning so crazy right now. We can take an Alperial. We don't have an Alperial in our hand, so it'll be a different target compared to everything else we have. And then the effects kick in. Alperial gets 5k, and then this gets 5k because Illandrina is in effect. We can, now it's up to you if you want to drop your other Illandrina, you know, give up that 5k shield. Me personally, I think that we're in the early stages of the game, and if you want to get over defensives and make sure you're still maintaining pressure, I say get rid of the plant token and just drop the Illandrina. It's perfectly fine, so our Vanguard gets 5k. So we can keep with that pressure. We only have 1 point of damage, like, you know, unless they double crit us, it's not even enough to kill. But we'll go ahead and continue our attacks. So Alperial will be first, because she has to be. Counterblast 1 with Luruthzul after being boosted by Illandrina. We'll bounce this back to our hand. And then we'll call out Myra Millen. Millen's effect will go off. We'll get 5k. And then if we need to use the Soul Blast effect, we will, because we want to slow our opponent down. But I don't think that's necessary. We'll check the Twin Drive first. Critical trigger, critical here. This is 23 and this is 23, so the power doesn't really matter where you go. Second check, front trigger again. That is insane. 10k to the front row. And let's just keep the attacks. This will be 33, and this will be 43. Now we played a little bit more aggressively there, so our hand is not as full as it was the prior 2 rounds, but this is just to showcase what Mythiarq can do when it has everything properly set up, and just how flexible the deck is. Now we could have held back on Habitat if need be, but I feel like why not just go for it? I mean, we could also say the same thing about Luruthzul, but you play enough Revivers in your deck, and you also have enough like thinning power to where I can't believe that you can draw into the piece that you want. You have a high chance of doing that. You have Margaret to filter out. If you open up with a Diantha, you're normally going to hold on to it. There's a lot you could do with this deck, and it's so flexible as long as you keep enough of the core elements of Mythiarq to get it to work. So when you guys are building your Mythiarq deck, definitely get my Mythiarq deck. Now, after watching this video, tell me your thoughts on Mythiarq. Are you guys inspired to play it? Do you want to give it a try? And tell me your thoughts on my list as well. Again, if you have not seen the Mythiarq deck profile, but you want to see what the deck can do, definitely check that out in the link in the description below, so that this way, you guys can give this deck a try and have a good understanding of what my build is. With that being said, card fighters, I'll catch y'all later. Peace.